Do you guys want to know my number one tip for building a great watch collection? Well, it's quality over quantity. There's only so many great watches we can afford, and there's a few really good reasons for this. I'm going to give you 4 reasons for quality over quantity. Stay tuned. All right, I'm back here with another TOCKING podcast. Thank you so much for all your nice comments, all of your emails, Instagram messages, comments down here on YouTube. This is another TOCKING podcast, which means I will upload the video on YouTube and I will put the audio out onto my podcast platform where you can get it on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you like to listen to podcasts, because there's no necessary visual component to these unless you guys just like watching on YouTube. If you are on YouTube, please hit subscribe. Also, you may want to hit the little alert bell down there so you can know when a new video comes out. I've been trying to do a few of these a week, a podcast, a video review, and I'm trying to do these Friday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific Q&As. So this is one that you'll want to be on live for if you possibly can at that time. And to do that, it's best to have alerts on this channel. So anyway, thank you very much for all your support. Today I'm going to go over my number one tip for creating a great watch collection, and that is to focus on quality over quantity. And I'm going to give you a few reasons for this, but I get a lot of times people will ask me, hey, do you think I should trade a this, and a this for a one watch? 2 watches for one, 3 watches for one, 4 watches for one. And my answer is very close to always yes in these cases. Anytime you have a chance to roll up a bunch of stuff that you don't necessarily wear or love to get a thing that you really love, you should definitely do it. So I'm going to give you 4 reasons for this. I want to preface this by saying that everybody's different, every case is different. Most of us are budget restrained in some sort of way, and this is why this really makes sense. If you can afford to have more watches, maybe the quantity to you that makes sense is 20, 30, 40, because you can afford to have 40 great watches. But most of us cannot. And so for us, we have to look at maybe 6, 5, 4, even if it's 2 or even if it's 1, I would suggest that most people go in that direction. But of course, if you can afford to have 20 of the greatest watches in the world and those are what you want, then by all means, go for that. I'm going to mainly speak on the reasons why no matter what your budget level, you may want to think about constraining. So maybe if you could afford to have 60 pretty good watches, you should instead have 40 amazing watches, or even 30 or 20. For most of us, it's going to be more like I could afford to have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 pretty good watches. Here are the reasons why maybe I should think about having 5, 4, whatever it is. Okay, let's go. Okay, reason number 1, and probably the most obvious, is you only have one wrist to wear a watch on. Okay, to be fair, some people wear watches on both, but it's not very fashion forward. So we're gonna stick to one wrist. And the thing with this is, you're gonna spend a lot of money on a watch, right? So in my mind, that is justified more the more you wear it. You kind of amortize the cost of this. I'm sure all of you have had this experience where, or many of you at least, where you kind of buy a watch, you never end up wearing it really, you sell it, and it really feels hollow because you got very little use out of it, versus the watch that you wear all the time and you have good memories with, and it really kind of becomes a part of you. Then really, no matter what you pay, or even if you lose a little bit selling it or whatever, it's not really as big of a deal because you've gotten your money's worth. It sucks to have things that just sit around. You don't want to have stuff where your attention is drawn to it and you kind of feel like obligated to wear the thing. I have some things in my safe that are like that now, and really I should think about selling them. But in general, you want a tight enough focus that you can wear what you want to wear, and you can establish attachments with the watches that you love. So this is my number one. Reason number two, the value proposition in watches is non-linear, okay? So what do I mean by that? I mean, for every dollar spent, you don't necessarily get one more dollar of quality. And in my mind, there are different cutoffs along the way. So if you think about like the very kind of entry market, the reason why I don't really do anything in this range is because I just don't really think there's anything good there. There are cool watches if you just want something that tells time and looks cool, then you can definitely get neat looking things there. I would assume most people who are watching my channel are more into kind of horological and historical significance of these things, and you really have to spend a certain amount of money before you get there. So of course, one of the kind of valid criticisms of my site and my business is that I really only stick to very expensive watches. And they're, of course, extremely expensive and crazy. However, it just costs that much to make the really cool stuff. So you see, for example, on my wrist is an Urwerk 210. This is an awesome, awesome watch, but it's very expensive. It's over $100,000 retail. It's over $150,000 retail. And the problem is you just can't get quality and significance like this for, let's say, $3,000. Yes, you can start getting into some cool things at around maybe 8 to 10, and a little bit more at 10 to 20. And it's really in the kind of 30, 40, up to 80 or 100 range that you start getting a lot of options of really cool stuff that I could make a good case for you owning in your collection. So obviously this is a pay-to-play area. Most people will never be able to spend this much on watches, and I understand that, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Most people shouldn't spend this much on watches. But if you're trying to build a really amazing watch collection, then I think you're better off spending in this range where the really great stuff is to get one watch rather than getting 2 or 3 watches that fall below this range and don't really meet the really amazing quality things. So on my site, I try to focus on watches that I would be happy to own in my watch collection. So they are kind of vetted to be worthwhile to own, which means they're all kind of expensive. So sorry about that, but just the reality is you're looking at stuff that is produced in low volumes, because what's the point of a luxury thing that, you know, is it really luxury if there's 50,000 of them or 100,000 or whatever? I personally don't think so. And you're looking at a lot of parts that are manufactured and finished and assembled and then have to be shipped and sold and marketed and all of these things, and that just costs money to do in a very high level way, and especially at low quantities. So this is kind of the sticky situation that we're in as watch collectors. It would be great if I could tell you this is a great way to buy a $1,000 watch. Unfortunately, it's just not the case. And so by limiting yourself to quality over quantity, you get to have more pieces that are in this range where the really good stuff is. Reason number 3, experience with quality is what hones your taste. So one of the great parts of this hobby is you get to learn what it is that you love about watches. And the best way to do this is by actually owning a watch and having it on the wrist. In fact, this is a problem with most watch media because most watch journalists can't afford to own the watches that they're writing about, right? Almost nobody can afford to wear all of these watches. And so there's only a very little bit that you can learn about a watch by handling it in a retail store, handling it at a press unveiling or something like that. The merits or demerits of a certain piece really become apparent when you wear it for a little while. And by having those experiences, you start to learn where the real value is in watches, in watchmaking, and also what your own personal tastes are. There are some things that I think are really great, but I may not personally want to own them or wear them, and I'm sure that you will be the same. So you kind of learn both of those things. What is great and what is valuable at all, and then within that subset, what is what I like and what I would want to wear. So by focusing in this quality range, you're getting kind of more reps, more at-bats in this area. You're trying more things that are great, and so you will have a better chance of owning great watches and figuring out what are the great watches for you. If you're just sort of trading in and out of stuff and never really getting to that level that I spoke about before, which is where the really good stuff is, then you're only learning a little bit because you're not really experiencing what actually is good. So you're kind of learning what is good amongst stuff that isn't that good, which ultimately, what is that, right? So by getting into this kind of higher range, whatever that is for you, wherever the higher quality range is that you can get to, you can start learning about what are really the best pieces within there and ultimately end up with the ideal watch for you. And reason number 4 is that these sorts of constraints force thought and introspection. And I think this is one of the genuinely valuable parts of this hobby. It is one of the real justifications for spending this much money on a watch, is that we're actually learning about ourselves through this process. And by thinking in terms of, I only have X amount of money, what is the best way to spend this? What is the best collection that I can put together? You end up learning a lot about yourself and about watches and about even life, as kind of trite as it sounds. But and there's no one right answer to this. Some people come up with that they want to collect linearly and get sort of a lot of great watches from, let's say, one brand or one series, or who knows. Some people want a lot of variety. Some people, like me, like crazy independent watches. Some people like really classic watches. Whatever it is, you're going to learn these things more readily when you have various constraints. So if you just kind of like look at random things and buy them because you like them, you're going to end up with a safe full of stuff, and they'll all be cool and you'll enjoy them, I'm sure. But it's not the same as saying, okay, how can I turn, or maybe I did get a bunch of things beforehand, so maybe you're buying with other watches, in trades. I do a ton of my business in trades, or with cash. Either way, it's the same to me. But in some way, you're going from, I'm going to have all these things, to what is the best way that I can spend this? What's the best scenario that I can turn this into? And just that sort of thought process in your mind is going to spark growth. It's going to spark thought. It's going to force you to drill down on what is important, on what is great. So, most of us aren't going to be able to have just one watch for everything. You don't want just a Grubel Forsey. Because one day you're going to be out playing with your kid or doing whatever, and you don't want to bang it around or diving in the ocean or something like that. But if I were looking into my safe and I saw, and this scenario happens quite often, are people look into their safe and maybe they've only spent $5 or $10 or $15,000, right? But they've done it 10 times or 20 times even, and they never even thought of the fact that they actually could afford a very significant, really amazing watch. But it takes the willingness to say, okay, you know what? I learned what I learned. I'm now going to take all these things and turn them into something that's really spectacular. And this is the kind of thinking that I really support, because I think at the end of the day, if you're looking at your box and you see, here's the thing that's really, really special. Here's the thing where tons of handcraft and innovation, and this is why I love independent watches, right? A creator's real intensity of life and all of their experience have come together for this object. You're going to get immeasurably more pleasure out of that than you are over the 3, 4, 5, 10 things that you bought just because you thought they looked cool or because they did a cool thing or something like that. So anyway, this is my thoughts for the day. This is how I think about my own collecting, and I think about the buying of my inventory for my website. It's kind of this central thought to me about the watch industry. There's no right answers within this. Wherever you find the value and wherever you find the quality is good for you. But the more you think of this kind of quality over quantity type of mindset, I think you're going to end up with the best watch collection for you. So that's all I've got for today. Thank you very much for watching or listening if you're listening to the podcast. As always, you can find me at TOCKING.com or at Steve Halleck on Instagram. And please feel free to reach out, check my inventory. If there's any business we can do, always let me know. Thank you.